It's great to be here. I flew in last night and I thought, oh man, I saw the weather coming in on the Wi-Fi, and I thought, please don't let me wake up in my store in Baltimore. So the other gentleman said, as Tia mentioned, I'm the founder and CEO of Modus Create. We started 15 years ago when mobile was the big disruption that everyone was looking at. And as I like to say, we got to start helping unicorns kill dinosaurs. And as we got to become a bigger firm, we started helping dinosaurs kill unicorns and fend off unicorns. So I wanted to frame just some postcards for the front. I spent a lot of my time talking to executives, as you mentioned, of all scales of the company that are very nervous about fundamental transformations, not just in technology, but their business model. I talk to investors that are worried about investments that may be irrelevant in 2 years in terms of what it takes to build and launch a startup, and increasingly founders of what I would frame as deep tech startups. So I guess the first question that I kind of look at, and I've been using this analogy of the kind of mobile wave, is are we 5 years away, from this true transformation being complete and mature? Are we 2 years away? Is it last year that was transformative? And I think there's some interesting stats. The first is that last year, ChatGPT had 70% market share in 2023. By the end of 2024, they had less than 25% market share. This is a very quickly evolving market. When I think about 2010, when I was starting Modus, I was basically looking at 3 fundamental physics to define a business model. The first was, how long is it going to take to get 5G LTE? You can't really have a mobile economy if you don't have bandwidth. How long is it going to take for this level of device to cost less than $1,000, so the hardware side and Moore's Law? And then there's what I loosely call the human productivity side, which is how long can it take a team of 3 to build an app as opposed to being a team of 30 in a year? And that is generally the world that I came out of, which is open source software. And what happened by 2015, which I think created this digital transformation economy we live in, is that 5G LTE hit by 2015. The devices, Moore's Law, did play out by 2015. And we had an entirely new generation of open source software that allowed a startup ecosystem, many of you in this room on the early stage side, to just you and a couple of friends build an app in 30 to 90 days, which was unheard of years before. So when I kind of look out to 2030 and work backwards, by 2030, we're going to be living in a world that is 6G, satellite-based, always on, always connected, globally connected network. We're going to be looking at a universe that is not just expensive, like you just break down the iPhone, it's just essentially an expensive set of sensors. Every light bulb in this room will be essentially an expensive set of sensors connected to a grid. And the amount of data that's pulling in will be enormous if it's not already. And if you look at the human productivity side, for those of you pitching investors, I did a private equity deal with Modus in 2021, which in retrospect was a great year, I guess, for those of us who were kind of into that universe. But what I was saying to them is the human productivity side, it won't be a new generation of open source software. It will be AI-powered developers, or it will be machines learning code, which is a geometric change. So investments that are made in firms that need to scale up big engineering teams, use firms like Modus and many of their responses to these events, may not be even relevant 3 to 5 years from now. So when I think about some of the big pharma initiatives that we're working in, I first kind of step back and look at the industry and say it's a challenging industry from an expectations perspective. Number one, you have to be highly innovative. I mean, curing cancer, right, it's not for the faint of heart. You have to do it with the utmost of regulation, scale, or safety, regulation, and compliance, which also requires massive overhead, which most smaller companies can't even get through those regulatory processes. And then you have to ensure that you can globally roll something out at scale with audit, governance, and control. So when I look at how that affects the work that we're doing on the ground at Modus, it really looks at a couple things. The first is things that we're seeing happening today are things like trial design for rare diseases, using AI models and using demographic data to define segments for trial design, so to make trial design a more efficient process. The second is, and this is a company that we actually acquired in France, was using AI and machine learning models to predict mutations of the COVID virus. So essentially replicating a bioorganism in silico and then letting it mutate and then figuring out what affects those mutations ahead of it happening in the real world. I didn't even know that was possible in 2021, but these are the kind of things that people are doing. I've also seen that same kind of technology being applied to protein mutation predictions for tumors, so for chemical design. And an area that's very interesting to me that we've been focused on the last 2 years is digital therapeutics. So getting outcomes without chemicals and using sensors on devices to detect like anomalies in breathing patterns to identify root causes of disease. And so these are things that are happening now, or that have been happening in the last 2 years. But they've been happening with what I would call the traditional version of the software development lifecycle. So people, tools, technology, platforms, and all of the underlying making that would make that a 6-month effort, a 2-year effort, is being radically changed. And I'll give you an experiment. We had a team inside of Modus build an app that can scan x-rays for tumors, identify the type of cancer by the tumor, and then make recommendations to the doctor. That took 2 days to build, without one line of code being written, just with prompts. And we then put it through the entire code architecture analysis that we do on projects at Modus, and did not tell the architects that reviewed it that it was generated. And they were like, this code is generally good, there's some stylistic code guidelines we'd like to see, that were then just created as a subprompts. And we then told them, one developer, 2 days, right? People are shocked. So I think, when I look at my own business and I say, okay, people, not to spread fear and certainly doubt, but people say, oh, they're going to be software engineers in the future. And I think there absolutely are going to be software engineers in the future. The difference is things that took months and years to do, smaller teams are going to be able to do. And so the question is, and I think for the leaders in the room who are building technology organizations, that are building product organizations, the question is, how are you measuring your success? How much throughput are you getting? So right now, if you talk to the Gartners of the world, they are saying that 70% of AI initiatives are focused on cost cutting. And that's an interesting thing because, folks that are raising money on the startup side or the mid-market side that are private equity backed, you are judged by your adjusted EBITDA. Raise your hand if you live by having produced adjusted EBITDA every quarter. Anyone? Okay, this guy? I'll talk to you afterwards. Imagine if for every dollar in profit you have to generate 20 cents, or every dollar in revenue you have to generate 20 cents in profit. You could look at any kind of business and say airlines generate 5 cents, startups should generate 40 cents. But if I look at a business like Modus or any consulting company that's supposed to generate 20 cents per dollar of profit, by just rethinking your back office, you can generate 35 cents in profit. That is game changing in terms of value creation in the market. So just to kind of, I guess, land the plane here, I talk to a lot of leaders in this space. The tech press likes to write, kind of the stories about everything is changing, but when you really if you take something like cybersecurity as it relates to all of this IP and sensitive data, especially in the life sciences space, the fallacy is that your attack surface, your most risky thing, is still that employee clicking an email with a bad link in it, right? The idea that what are the kind of innovation capabilities you need as a firm really hasn't changed. And I think the notion that I think people are focusing a little bit too much on is all this technology is going to automate people out of everything. But when you talk to the firms that are leading in this space, that are doing the most AI, they have actually created ongoing research capabilities, design capabilities. They're putting their best creative thinkers, leveraging and experimenting with tools. And that's not what most companies are doing. And that's the same advice we were giving people 15 years ago when mobile was rethinking how everything was done. So I guess to kind of land the plane here, and for those of you leading startups, for those of you leading broader businesses or looking to invest, what we're really looking at is 2025 is everyone needs a personal learning journey for AI. It doesn't matter if you're in marketing in the startup or in engineering or in HR. You have to have a personal learning journey. At Modus, we're mandating that all departments have a set of experiments that they're doing to kind of put themselves out of work, if you will, but to kind of show them that this is really leverage on your time. And you should be doing more creative, more aggressive thinking using these tools as opposed to being worried about them putting you out of a job. And you want to create the learning company. And I think, again, at the end of the day, the companies that we see doing the best things were making the same moves 15 years ago. They were figuring out that Mobile is not just a bolt-on, it's not just a project, it's not just something we do. And I think if you look at the bigger companies, right now you'll see titles like Director of AI. Well, 15 years ago you saw Director of Mobile or Director of Cloud. And at the end of the day, it all just becomes product development, right? It all just becomes the things that we do to run and scale business. So I'm excited to hear from the presenters today. For those of you, again, on the raising money side, happy to open my network and for all the guys like Tien that I know to connect you, but excited for the event today. Thanks so much.